Hey, it's your friend and host, Courtney Turek, and welcome to Bold Moves, Confident Choices, the podcast where we own our path, make fearless decisions, and get real about what it takes to turn bold ideas into reality. Okay, we need to get ready because today's guest is here to change the way we think about personal branding and LinkedIn. Her name is Melissa Cohen, known as the Good Witch of LinkedIn. She is a best-selling author, branding strategist, and a former fashion exec. And let me tell you, I think we've all heard of Ralph Lauren. Went from zero online presence to LinkedIn top voice. She's built a thriving business by helping others find their voice, grow their influence, and show up with confidence. So, all right, friends, let's welcome the queen of authentic connection, Melissa Cohen. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, my friend. Thank you for making me sound so good. I hope I live up to that.
You absolutely do live up to that. And for anyone who does not know you out there, you must connect with Melissa. You lead with authenticity through every post you generate, through every conversation you have, Melissa. So I am so honored to have you as a friend and on my podcast today here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So before we jump into the real meat of the conversation, how about you just share a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I'm Melissa Cohen. I live in New York City. I am a native New Yorker. I spent I shouldn't probably even say how many years in the fashion industry, which was always what I wanted to do. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit later about how that shifted into the work that I do today. And I'm also very passionate about causes that champion women and young girls. And so one that's near and dear to my heart is an organization called Her Move Next that I serve on the board of. And we empower girls and young women through the power of chess, community, and competition, which is super fun.
Oh, wow. I did not know that, Melissa. That is super cool.
Yes, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, it's not every day I meet a native New Yorker either. You are far and few.
New York City does have a lot of transplants, right? Because I think so many people just see the vision of New York City as it's portrayed on TV and in the movies. And so they really want to come here and experience it. But yes, I was born in Brooklyn, so I am a native New Yorker.
It's so cool. Envious always said it's the one city I should have lived in. And instead, I decided to move to Boston.
It's not too late. You can still change the error of your ways and come live near me.
Very true, Melissa. But I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. But I will come visit you anytime, any day.
Okay, deal.
Okay, because I know there is a lot of juice to your story, I would like to go ahead and jump into what was that big, bold move or confident choice that took things for you, Melissa, to the next level, personally or professionally?
Yeah, so I think there were two. Hopefully, I'm allowed to have two because there's sort of
Of course.
steps in the journey. So I spent a really long time in the corporate world. I always wanted to work in the fashion industry. I remember the day that someone came to my high school from one of the fashion schools and talked about the career opportunities that were there. That was really exciting for me. And so that's what I did, right? I worked my way up that corporate ladder. That's what I always thought the dream was. Keep climbing. Eventually, hopefully, you get to a C-suite role, you get to that corner office. And that was always the plan. And that's what I was doing until the pandemic came along. So I lost my job in 2020. I'd been with my dream company. That's pretty much where I thought I would just retire. And when I tried to re-enter the workforce after things started to settle and calm down a little bit, I just had really bad experiences with job search. There's just no way to say it nicely. It was brutal. I found terrible behavior on the part of recruiters, a lot of ghosting. And I think the final straw for me was one role where I had interviewed multiple times. I really felt like it was the perfect job for me. And I had been in constant communication with the recruiter. She was texting me from her cell phone. And the last conversation I had with her was, "You're our top candidate. I'm speaking with the president on Monday. I'll keep you closely posted on next steps." And that is the last time I ever heard from her. And
Wow.
it was really eye-opening to me. And so the first bold move I made was to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to put in all the energy and effort that goes into a job search and all the preparation, all the interview prep. I was doing store visits, I was doing sourcing strategies, I was coming up with business models. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I started my own business consulting. And I never felt that I was an entrepreneur. That was not in my DNA. That was never on my radar. But I ended up really enjoying it. I ended up being successful when I wasn't sure that I could be. And that was really exciting for me. And the second bold move that I made was realizing that we don't always have to stay doing the same thing that we've always done. The fashion industry was what I'd always known, and it was good to me. It really was. I had a wonderful career. I got to travel the world. I got to see countries and meet people that I never would have otherwise. But after a while, I started to realize that there was something else that was bringing me more joy, and that was really exciting and interesting. And so I made the change in 2024 to focus solely on what I'm doing now, which is personal branding, LinkedIn strategy, helping others to find their voice on the platform. And that was probably even scarier than the first bold move, to be honest, because it was completely walking away from the only thing I'd really known for a very long time.
So, Melissa, there's a lot to unpack here as you go through your two bold moves. And you start off by talking about you remember being in high school, having a fashion exec come in, present, and you're like, that's what I want to do. So many of us, when we were our younger self, because we're around the same generation, we thought we had to have this linear path. We had to climb the corporate ladder, getting the corner office. That's when you had made it. But in reality, when we take a step back, it's far from the truth of what many of us have experienced today, including yourself.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that's a really important point. Very few of us have linear careers today. You mentioned the book that I wrote. That was one of the whole premises of the book, is that our career paths look very different now than they did in, let's say, our parents' generation. A lot of people in previous generations, you worked for the same organization for 25, 35, 40 years. You got a retirement party and a pension. Those things don't really happen very frequently anymore. And so our careers today, a lot of us have what's called a portfolio career. A lot of us will reinvent ourselves multiple times over. And not only is that okay, I think it's exciting.
For sure. And it's happening more and more to so many people. And by you bringing this to the forefront, it assures people that it is okay to reinvent yourself. You were sharing more about your career and the bold moves. I mean, you worked with some big names, girl. You were up there. You really were moving up the executive ladder with some premier brands that so many people idolize. And then to take a step back and realize, okay, COVID hits and you have to go back out there, look for new opportunities. You mentioned you're doing all this work to prepare for each one because, again, you're just not interviewing to be on the floor of a store. You're actually interviewing to be at an executive level. So it takes a lot of work. So I hear of so many people talking about being ghosted by recruiters and the scenarios that you shared, or even by companies. What piece of advice do you have for those individuals who are facing that today?
It's a great question. Know that it's not you. It's really easy to take these things personally and to think that you did something wrong. And you didn't do anything wrong. Ghosting is not acceptable behavior ever. And I understand the side of a recruiter too. So there are people who actually will get upset that they submitted an application and never heard anything. And while I understand that, I also see the other side where a lot of people are getting hundreds of applications to every role. And so maybe it's not realistic to get a personalized response to every application. But I do believe at a certain point, when you've gotten to the point of actually having interviews and actually having put a lot of time and effort into the process, a quick thank you email is just the right way to go. What would have satisfied me would have just been, hi, Melissa, thank you so much for going through this process with us. We really thought you were a wonderful candidate. We decided to go in another direction, but we wish you the best of luck. And I would have been disappointed, of course, but I also would have felt like there was closure, and I would have felt at least that I was respected in the process. To just be
Right.
completely ghosted with nothing leaves you feeling very disrespected. And so I would really tell anybody that that has happened to, it's not you, it's bad behavior, it's not acceptable, and you didn't do anything wrong.
Such a good point. And interviewing, I feel, is always a two-way street. It should never be just one-sided because even if you're the interviewee, you're interviewing that company as much as they are. And so then when you're ghosted, it just leaves a bad taste for that company as a whole. Even though it might have been one person, they represent the company. And I'm guessing when that happens, you really don't want to work ever for that company again or try to.
I would even go a step further and say I would never buy products from there based on how
Wow.
I was treated.
Wow. Yeah. Makes complete sense.
There's plenty of fish in the sea, right? Old
For
expression,
sure.
but very truthful. There's plenty of places where I can buy apparel. And even though it was a brand that I liked and thought well of, I have no desire to spend money there now.
Very interesting. Makes complete sense. Okay, so let's talk about the second bold move, girl. I mean, I'm going to say you walked into this not really knowing that you had, I'm going to say powerful because you bring such an approach to LinkedIn that so many people are craving, so many people are looking for. And that is true, powerful authenticity from the core. And I would love for you to share how that process happened for you, how you started walking down this path. How did we get to Melissa Cohen, the Good Witch, today?
I was going to say totally by accident, and yet also completely with authenticity. And those two things
Yeah.
don't have to be at odds with one another. So I was never a social media user. To this day, I don't have Facebook. I've never had Facebook. I checked out Twitter for about 3 seconds and instantly said, no, thank you. And Instagram, I like to look at pretty pictures and brands that I like, but I never really got a whole lot out of it. So I joined LinkedIn in 2008, and I know exactly why I joined in 2008. I had been working at Ralph Lauren. I had joined Ralph in late 2005, and an opportunity fell in my lap that I wasn't looking for. That was too good to pass up. And so I ended up leaving Ralph at the time and going to work for this high end. I was in children's apparel for most of the time I was with Ralph. So it was a high end children's wear brand that was relaunching, saying and doing all the right things. It was an amazing opportunity. And it was a really fun job. I had always worked, as you mentioned, for these big corporate brands. This was the first time that I was working with a really small team. The whole corporate office was, I want to say, 13 people. And so I got to be involved in everything. My background is in product development and production, so the manufacturing and sourcing side. But here, I was doing everything. I was going to fabric and trim shows with the design team, and I was helping to pick out fabrics and trims. I was going to our warehouse with our technical designers and doing QA. I was doing all of these things that normally in bigger organizations, you're a lot more siloed. Unfortunately, this was in 2007, 2008. And so that was the global financial crisis. And
Yes.
so the company that I had been working for went Chapter 7. I didn't even know what Chapter 7 was. I had only ever heard of Chapter 11. I hope to never hear Chapter 7 again. It was a really painful time for me personally.
I'm going to stop you there because I don't know chapter 7. I only know chapter 11. So could you enlighten us?
Yeah, so Chapter 7 is basically bankruptcy, but it's final bankruptcy. You can restructure under Chapter 11. There are organizations that will go bankrupt under Chapter 11, but
Right.
then refinance themselves, they reorganize themselves, and they can carry on.
Okay.
Chapter 7 is doors closed, lights out, you're done. We owed vendors money, and that was very painful for me personally. I never wanted to ever feel like somebody wasn't getting paid from an organization that I was part of. That was probably the hardest part of it for me personally. And so I went to LinkedIn because I was going to need to find a job. But I was super, super lucky. And I actually ended up going back to Ralph. I was out of work for, I think, 2 or 3 months. And I was able to come back to Ralph. And they did tell me when I re-interviewed for the role that don't do that again. You left once, don't be doing that again. And I said, nope, absolutely will not. And so when I came to LinkedIn the second time in 2020, it was because I had lost my job. We were in this global pandemic. the apparel industry in particular was hit super, super hard. Nobody was buying clothes. Nobody was going to parties. Nobody was going to the office. Nobody was going to the gym. So apparel sales were just tanking. Brands were trying to cut orders. I mean, goods were literally on the water, on a boat, and brands were trying to get out of them. So I knew it was going to be a very different experience for me looking for a job this time. And so I said, well, I really should go back and check out that LinkedIn thing that I joined 100 years ago.
That LinkedIn thing.
And I had never done anything with it because I was lucky and I didn't have to. But I had a memory of it in my head of what it was, right? It's like a job board. It's where you post your resume. It's where you say, hey, I need a job. Can you help me? And what I found when I got there was completely different. And I think it was just this very fortuitous timing of where we were in the world and people really craving more social interaction however they could find it. I live in New York City, as we talked about at the very beginning of our conversation. We had terrible lockdowns. The highlight of my week was going to the grocery store and hoping that it was safe. With my gloves on and my 2 masks, we were really scared. We didn't know what was happening at first. And LinkedIn became this social outlet for me where I started to have conversations with people and I started to interact with people and I started to actually look forward to seeing some of the same people day over day. It became my virtual office. It became my virtual water cooler because I didn't have one to go to anymore. But what I think really sold LinkedIn for me, and this is from my heart, I talk about this a lot. I didn't realize how much of my own self-worth and self-identity was tied up in who I worked for and what my title was until it was gone, until I could no longer say that that's who I was and what I did, who I worked for. And I felt like my voice was taken away from me. I felt like I had nothing of value to add to a conversation. What's the first thing someone asks you when they meet you? What do you do?
What do you do?
I couldn't answer that anymore. Or at least I couldn't answer it the way I had always been accustomed to answering it. And I couldn't answer it in a way that made me proud. I think the biggest surprise for me is as I started posting, and we can talk about my first post in a minute if you'd like, but as I started posting and got more comfortable, it was shocking to me that people responded positively to what I had to say. And that was really huge for me. It gave me back my voice. It made me feel like, no, I do have something worthwhile to say. I do have something to share. People do want to hear what I want to contribute. And I wanted to do that for other people. I never want it to be all about me. There are people on LinkedIn who they just post and it's all about them and then they walk away. For me, it's all about having conversations. It's about meeting new people and it's about introducing people to one another. LinkedIn, that's what it means, right? Linking people up, linking them together. I love to introduce people to one another that I've met on the platform. And I love to also take those relationships offline. I'm fortunate where I live, a lot of people come here. A lot of people come to New York City for business or for vacation. And I love to meet the people that I've connected with on the platform.
I actually spoke to someone last week who was going to be seeing you, and I don't remember who it was, but they brought you up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, Melissa's amazing. So here's what I do also love about you, Melissa, is you are speaking truth. You're not just speaking that this is what people should do or you could do. The 2 posts that I really love of yours a week are when you share highlights of what other people have said on LinkedIn. And it's not one person, it's multiple people. You take the pearls and the gems and you bring it forward to the community so everyone can see them. And then you also do your for to follow, which is also cool because I've been connecting with those people. They're fascinating.
Oh, that makes me happy. Those are my favorite posts. So the one on Friday, which is LinkedIn Nuggets, is the easiest for me because you guys do all the work. I just have to find them and repost them, but I don't have to write anything. So that's my easiest post of the week and I really love it. And the Sunday post, the 4 to follow, that's actually my hardest post of the week to write because LinkedIn only gives you a certain number of characters. It gives you 3,000 characters in a post. And I'm writing about 4 people. And so it's not giving me a whole ton of room to talk about each person, but I really want to highlight why is this person interesting and why should you get to know them? Because I think the old LinkedIn was you only connected with people in your industry. And I was
Yeah.
guilty of that too. When I resurfaced in 2020, the few connections that I had, and there certainly weren't a ton of them, but they were all in the fashion industry. Because the whole mantra way back then was you're only going to connect with people who work in your field, who work in your sector, who are going to help you get your next job. But first of all, that's really boring. Well, it's not necessarily true. Somebody might not work in your industry, but they might know someone in your industry and they can make a whole different connection that you might not ever have had. But I think people are really want to meet interesting people, and there are fascinating people on LinkedIn. I even surprise myself sometimes when I go to do this of I'll be like, wow, okay, I really picked a good 4 this week. Like these 4 are amazing. Because we take it for granted sometimes how interesting people really are on the platform.
We so take it for granted. Melissa, as we're going through this, there's a lot of people who are listening thinking, wow, I should really get more involved on LinkedIn. You had mentioned what your first post was like. I want you to touch on that real quick, but I also want you to share, can you give 3 things people can do to really start to put their voice, to start making that impact on LinkedIn within the community?
Sure. My first post was awful. It's everything I would tell people not to do. So it was a repost of an article. So reposts never do as well on LinkedIn as organic content. So strike 1, it was a repost. Strike 2, I didn't add anything really of value in my words. You can just repost or you can repost with thoughts. This was repost with thoughts. I shouldn't have bothered because my thoughts were basically non-existent. It was something along the lines of, this looks like an interesting article or some nonsense. And that's strike 2. And strike 3 is that it was an article from Women's Wear Daily, which is the fashion industry trade newspaper. And oh, guess what? It was paywalled. So most people couldn't read it anyway. So strike 3. It was a terrible post. But what I got back from that terrible post was that nobody was mean to me. Nobody scolded me. Nobody told me how foolish I was. I got a few likes. Somebody actually reposted it. I think they felt sorry for me. And I was able to keep going. I didn't get backlash like you might get on other platforms. And that gave me the courage to keep posting. And now I post like 6 days a week and they've gotten better. 3 things people can do. 1, just get started. So I think a lot of people, and it's human nature, we're scared. We want to wait until we feel confident. You're not going to feel confident at first. Just make that post. The second thing I would do is don't always make it about yourself. Makes it easier for you. When the focus isn't always on you and the focus is on someone else, it feels easier to you. And you're also really making someone else happy. Everybody loves to have the spotlight shown on them by somebody else. I had somebody ask me once, do you ask permission before you post your 4 to follow? And I said, no, it's a public profile, right? If you're putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there. I've never had anything but, oh my God, thank you so much for featuring me. It was so exciting. I met some great people. People love the connections that come out of that post. And so that would be my second tip is make it about other people too. Don't always make it about you. And the third thing I would say, and I feel like I say this so frequently, so sorry if you've heard it before, but don't underestimate what commenting can do for you on the platform. I think we're very focused on content. Social media is content, social media content. And content's powerful, but the comments are where you really get to speak with one another. I love nothing more than to look at one of my posts and see multiple people having a conversation together, like that sort of comment thread. I love that. And so don't underestimate. If you read something that resonates with you, don't be shy in telling that person that you really enjoyed what they wrote and why and what your takeaways were from it. We write because we want to impact somebody. It's like when you write a book. Every single post that someone makes is sort of like a mini publication. So they want to hear how it impacted somebody else.
Those are 3 simple steps, and it's something everyone can do. Even if you fail on the first one of just starting the post, hey, you broke the ice, you got started, and there's room for improvement for all of us.
Yes, 100%.
So, Melissa, reflecting back to your younger self, what would you tell 18-year-old Melissa today?
That question reminds me of an exercise that I did in like a peer coaching group. And the question was, if you wrote your memoir today, what would it be titled? My answer was, it all worked out in the end. And that's what I would tell my 18-year-old self. It will all work out. And you don't have to know today what you're going to be doing 10 years from now, or even 5 years from now. Figure out what you want to do for the next 18 months. And that might not end up being what you do forever. I was an Italian language and literature major in college. It was
It sounds fun.
it was fun, but it was pretty not helpful from a career standpoint. And that's okay. It all worked out in the end, and it worked out pretty well. So that's what I would tell my 18-year-old self. Don't stress about the big picture so many years down the line. Focus on small steps and know that everything that you do, if you do it with good intention, if you make a mistake, it's reversible, it's fixable. Failure isn't fatal. I know that's a big cliche, but it's true. If you never fail at something, you never learn from anything. So don't be afraid to take chances.
Spot on. We need the twists and turns and drops in life to actually come back to the top. It's so important. So, Melissa, I'm thinking back and reflecting on our conversation, and there's, again, so many nuggets that you've provided to all of us today. And one is reinvention is possible. What we have in our mind doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to be. Your life took turns and twists and pivots, and now you're doing something that you never thought you would be doing. And that's helping others share their voice on LinkedIn, create that brand, and help them shine through and through. And I'm so proud to say that Melissa has also helped me with my LinkedIn. And she gave me lots of good advice. And at times I fall short on LinkedIn,
No, you
but I
don't.
will. But I do look to you as a role model, and I thank you so much for that. And I'm so honored that you are a part of my life and that I get to share your voice with my community.
Thank you so much. From my heart, you are such a light and such a wonderful presence for me and for so many others. And you're a perfect example of why we need to be on LinkedIn. I get so much joy from what you share because the work that you do is super important. And people need to know what you're doing and how you're impacting others. And so that's just a perfect example of why LinkedIn isn't just superfluous. It's not just surface level. There's real people doing incredible things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melissa. And if you could leave anything with my audience today, what would that be?
People are interesting and people are good more than they're not. So
Yes.
be curious, seek out interesting people and learn about them because you never know what's going to happen when you have a conversation with somebody that you don't know yet.
Be curious, everyone. Just put your first post out there, highlight other people, and don't forget to comment on other people's posts. We see them, we love them, we read them. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being here today. And to my audience, I want you to go be bold, be confident, and be you. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to Bold Moves, Confident Choices. Remember, the boldest moves come from trusting ourselves and taking action. If you loved this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share with someone who needs a little extra boost to boldness. Until next time, be bold, be confident, be you. Thanks.